In this tutorial, we'll learn about for loops in C programming. A for loop is especially useful when you know in advance how many times you want to repeat a section of code. It works similarly to other loops like while and do while loops, which we covered before. Before we dive into the for loop, let's quickly review how the standard while loop works. In this example, we set the counter to 4 on line 4. Then the while loop checks the conditional statement, and this statement is true because 4 is greater than 0. Therefore, line 7 will be executed. The printf will print out counter equals 4 because remember, counter is 4 and we want to use the value of 4 first before decrementing by 1. So before the loops is over, this gets decremented by 1 and it goes back to line 6 to check the condition again. 3 is still greater than 0, and then we'll keep repeating until counter is equal to 0. 0 is not greater than 0, so this statement will be false. Break out and run line 10 instead. Let's run to see this. 4, 3, 2, 1 as expected. Now let's replace the while loop with a for loop. The syntax is for. Keep this conditional statement here, but we add 2 more things inside of these parentheses. In the beginning of the parentheses, type in int counter equals 4. We're initializing the counter by 4. That means that we don't need line 4 anymore, so let's delete this. Remember that we're keeping the conditional statement, but we need to add 1 more. Add another semicolon, and then this was where we can decrement the counter. Counter minus minus. This also means that we don't need to do that on line 5, so we can delete this post decrement operator. And that's it. This behaves the same way as the while loop. Instead of declaring and initializing the variable outside the loop, we can declare here. We must be careful of not using this variable outside of this for loop because this variable is only limited to the scope of this for loop. So keep that in mind. If you need to use this variable outside of this loop, then just declare this outside of this loop and leave this blank. And this will work, but we also need to add int counter equals 4. Let's get back to the original example. Then we add the semicolon and we keep this conditional statement here. Then we add another semicolon and then we decrement the counter here. This counter gets decremented after an iteration is executed. So the output would be counter is equal to 4, and then the next iteration, this gets decremented, and then it becomes 3, and so on. So let's build and run and see what happens. So same thing, same behavior as expected. We can also increment a counter here too, just like the while loop. Instead of initializing the counter to 4, let's initialize it to 0. Let's change this conditional statement. Let's say that we want to keep executing until counter is 4. And then let's change the post decrement operator to the post increment operator. And so instead of saying 4, 3, 2, 1, it will go 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's run and see what happens. 0, 1, 2, 3 as expected. You can also increment this by 2 or any other number that you wish to do. Same with the decrement. You can also do the same, counting downwards by 2 as well, or any number. So let's run and see what happens again. 0, 2. So when counter is equal to 2 and then we want to add 2 to the counter, then this conditional statement becomes false because 4 is not less than 4. This doesn't make sense. So it becomes false and exits the loop as demonstrated in the output. Let's change it back to just the standard post increment operator. You can also use break and continue keywords in the for loop as well. It works the exact way as the while loop. So if we break here, that means that the printf will only be executed 1 time when counter is equal to 0. Let's demonstrate this. 0, as expected. It breaks out after the first iteration because we put this break statement at the end of this iteration. And now let's show the continue keyword. Let's add the continue keyword on line 5. So that means that this printf will never be executed because the program ceases continue and then it skips to the next iteration until this conditional statement here becomes false. Let's demonstrate this. I'm not expecting to see any output here, as expected. That's it for this tutorial on for loops in C. Now you understand how to use them and how they compare to while loops. Thanks for watching.